Let's be honest, you can't just like pop a piece of chicken in the oven, not season it, and then take it out and then love the taste. Hey y'all, Poppin and Plant-Based here. I want to talk to you guys about plant-based meat alternatives. So I'm in a new little setup. I know from the last few videos. The last few videos are like more intimate and woo-sa, but this is more like, I don't know, I feel like, when you go plant-based, when you go vegan, it's difficult because you crave meat. You'll crave like either, it's not necessarily the taste of the meat you crave, because let's be honest, you can't just like pop a piece of chicken in the oven, not season it, and then take it out and then love the taste. No, you are craving just the ambiance. Like you're craving the surroundings that made that particular experience good for you. You're craving that cultural connection. You're craving sometimes just the texture of a food. And sometimes you're craving the activity aspect of it. Like for crabs, I know like breaking the shell is exciting for a lot of people. Going through and getting the meat, that's exciting for people. For my family, it was always getting this is gonna sound, anyway, getting the marrow out of the bone, like the lamb bone, and you just at the dinner table. It just was always a fun activity. So that being said, when you go vegan or plant-based, you might have some meat alternatives that are pretty similar to what you're used to, but you don't get those aspects that made it fun. So the thing about it is, when you go plant-based or vegan, you have to get meat alternatives that work for your reason why. Why did you go vegan? If it's for health reasons, then you want to stay away from processed mock meats. You want to be more whole foods, plant-based. If you went vegan strictly for the animals, then, I mean, you can eat whatever you want. Mock meats, anything that people might say is unhealthy is, I mean, fair game, because you technically didn't go vegan for the health aspects. And if you went vegan for the environment, then a whole foods plant-based option will also be your best bet, because it does cut on that carbon footprint, because you're not eating anything that's processed. So that being said, I'm going to share with you my favorite mock meats. And for this particular haul, this is all whole foods plant-based. Some things are a tad bit processed because they're canned. And then like some things I froze, so I guess that's a process. But all in all, it's all plant-based. So we'll start with one of my favorites is oyster mushrooms. This is like, this is very versatile. It naturally has a very chickeny flavor. And mushrooms, oh my gosh, when people say they hate mushrooms, I'm like, you don't hate mushrooms. Because there's so many different kinds of mushrooms that, like, how could you possibly hate mushrooms? There are mushrooms that taste like lobster. And look like lobster. There are mushrooms that taste like fish. There are mushrooms that taste like shrimp. There are mushrooms that taste like chicken. There are so many different types of mushrooms that you really shouldn't rule them all out. Oyster mushrooms are I would say the easiest to come by. There's chanterelles, there's black trumpet, there are chicken of the woods, there's shrimp of the woods. All of them have distinct flavor profiles. There's lobster mushrooms, but this is by far the most common. You should be able to get your hands on these at any Asian supermarket, at any international supermarket. There are a mushroom that's similar to this would be the chanterelle mushroom, which can be found at but yeah, you could fry these babies up. You could toss them a stir fry. The important thing to remember about oyster mushrooms and mushrooms in general is that they have a lot of water content, but once you remove the water in the cooking process, it makes them a lot more meatier. Now, it's it defeats the purpose as far as if you're only eating the mushrooms for the nutrients, because of course when you cook out the water in the mushrooms, you are losing a lot of that nutrients, but it tastes a lot better. So mushrooms are just high in vitamin D, so they're a good option because of that. When you cook them, you want to make sure that you're searing them, almost like when you're cooking chicken. Like, you literally want to make a good piece of chicken that's like crispy on the outside, still retains the flavor on the inside. You want to sear it. So if you're stir frying or something like that, you just want to like pop it in the pan with some oil to make the outside like crunchy, and then like turn down the flame and cook it longer to cook it all the way through, but still remain the juices, but still have the juices remain. The thing about oyster mushrooms is when you buy them, and mushrooms in general, they're very finicky. The least finicky mushrooms would probably be portobello mushrooms and white mushrooms. Those keep for a good amount of time. Maybe you can get close to about 10 days, maybe 2 weeks out of those mushrooms, maybe even more in the refrigerator. If it's low condensation, like if there isn't a lot of water. Oyster mushrooms, however, within a week of buying them, you need to eat them. In my personal opinion, they don't keep well in the freezer. So after you buy these, you want to eat them the next day, same day, next few days. Now, you can keep them longer. I've gotten them to where I can keep them for up to a week if I do aeration. So if I, poke holes in this wrapping, or if I take it out and put it on a top shelf, someplace where they don't get a lot of moisture and they're able to dry out but still remain cool, then I get about a week out of them. Portobello mushrooms, these are super good like for any type of ground meat you want to make. Now, ground meat, you can use any type of root vegetables like carrots, mushrooms, even cauliflower. You can make a nice like minced meat out of those things. I know a lot of people use nuts, but also a lot of people are allergic to nuts. Mushrooms, if you just shred them and then you cook them down, salting them to release all the moisture and get them nice and firm, it'll taste a lot like a ground meat. And I've made mushroom meat for my friends and my family, and they have not been able to tell the difference. I've also made burgers out of mushrooms, not just the portobello mushrooms where you grill and then you throw it on a bun. That's nasty to me. I don't enjoy that. I transform it into a burger by mincing this up, adding some flour, adding some, peppers, adding some black beans, and then I make a nice burger patty out of it. But this is great in stews. These keep very well frozen. I freeze these mushrooms. Every time I go grocery shopping, I get a pack of these portobello mushrooms, a pack of white mushrooms, and then I'll get like a specialty mushroom of some sort, like a oyster mushroom or maybe something else. But these are good. You could toss these and put them in anything, and they taste pretty good even if you haven't mastered the art of searing them or frying them. They do really, really well. They hold their shape. These mushrooms and also the oyster mushrooms hold up very well if you're frying mushrooms. So have like a beefy flavor to them. You can get a nice beefy flavor, especially if you add like a cumin and like your steak seasoning. Good beefy flavor. Next, I want to talk about these mushrooms are king oyster mushrooms. I often use these to make my scallops, to make any type of vegan seafood. These are really good for that. And they keep well the same way as oyster mushrooms, except maybe they keep a little bit longer and they can have a little bit more moisture without going bad. These are new to the rotation. These seafood mushrooms, these are super good. I got this at the international supermarket, and these I put in ramen. Sometimes I can fry them up and I know they'll be good. And they do have they have a seafood flavor to them. A very small amount of seafood flavoring, but it'll do the trick. I like them. They're pretty good. Any type of stir fry, I mix them in and they're really good. They seem to keep very well in their original packaging. Like, I don't have to do anything extra. Like the other things, I have to aerate them, but this is fine on its own. Now, if I want to make vegan fish honey, normally I use banana blossoms, but I have not been able to find banana blossoms in this area. Banana blossoms, literally, once you marinate them overnight and then, you fry them up, they literally peel, like they look like fish. This doesn't really look like fish, but it'll do the job. I saw this on, I'll link her page below, but she made a fish out of these, and I was like, interesting. I got a lot of eggplant, but like no banana blossom. So I really just cut these, I score them, and then I don't marinate them because my eggplants already have a lot of water, and it'll just be really difficult to fry them up and it not turn into mush. So what I do is I put the seaweed directly on them and then I fry them. I score them because I'm letting in more of that flavor. And I double batter them, wet batter, dry batter. I use seasonings that are traditionally used for seafood, for fish on this. And that's how I get it to taste like fish and to look like fish, actually, once I score it and then keep this coloration. I put this seaweed, I attach this onto the back of this after I've cut them into like fillets, and it's really good. It does the trick. When I make crab cakes or saltfish fritters or anything like that, I use seaweed. And if I'm making crab cakes, I will use hearts of palm, which I don't have any right now. Normally I get that at every single grocery store haul, but I went to a different grocery store this time around and I found all those different specialty mushrooms, but they didn't have hearts of palm. But I use the hearts of palm for like any type of crab cake. Even if I'm just doing like a stir fry, it has like a seafoody flavor. And if I'm doing more so like a fish, like a salmon patty or something like that, I will use my next item, jackfruit. So jackfruit is bomb. The thing about jackfruit is it's temperamental. You have to cook this the right way. When you use jackfruit, if you just take this out the can and just cook it, it's not gonna get you there. You do have to prepare this correctly. It was taking me a long time to prepare it the way that people traditionally prepare it, so I changed it. What I do, if I'm making any type of chicken dish, what I'll do is I'll boil this. I'll take it out the can, drain it, boil it in basically a broth, like a veggie broth, but that I make myself, or I'll add like water. Into that I'll add poultry seasoning, and then I'll boil this up. If you don't have like poultry seasoning, and then I'll also add salt to it. If you don't have poultry seasoning, you can use like simply bay leaves and water and salt and nutritional yeast. I always add nutritional yeast to the water. It gives it that umami flavor when I'm boiling it, along with my poultry seasoning. I take it out, I remove any seeds. It's easier to remove the seeds after you've boiled the jackfruit. And then I use it as chicken after that. I might fry it up. I might to make like nuggets, or I might make like a patty out of it and bread it. It just really just depends on what I'm making. I've made chicken parmesan with this, where it was an actual like patty and you could slice it and everything. I've used this to make fish fritters, and instead of doing the poultry blend in the water, I'll use the spices that you would normally use for seafood, and I boil it in that, and then I go about cooking it. Some spices you could use for seafood will be like thyme, for example, is a huge seafood flavoring. And then I also, if I'm making seafood, I boil it with a pack of these crumbled up If I'm making any seafood dish ever, I only use one of the packs. That's all you really need. Yeah. And so garbanzo beans, super good. This is our last item of this haul, but you can make falafel out of this. You can make, boy oh boy, I've made meatloafs out of this, combining this with mushroom. I've made all types of patties, burgers. It runs the gamut. Even if you just have a stir fry and you add this, it's super good. Even if you make spaghetti and you don't want to deal with the mock meats or you don't like mushrooms, you can add garbanzo beans and that'll be your meat and it'll be bomb. You can make it in pretty much everything. Garbanzo bean, they're gonna get you there. And garbanzo bean flour, it's gonna get you there all the time. When you use garbanzo beans, you don't need flour. You don't need like flax eggs. Garbanzo beans, they bind on their own. When you use stuff like jackfruit or any of the other alternatives we've discussed, you do need a binder of some sort. If you're not using garbanzo bean flour, you'll need to use like a flax egg, which is made out of flax seed or flax meal with water. You combine it and it makes like a gelatinous egg that binds everything together. But if you're using anything with garbanzo beans or garbanzo bean flour, you don't need flour, which is why falafels are gluten-free, because garbanzo beans, even when you mix fava beans, or they have great binding properties. And even if you, like, say for example, want to make a meringue, if you boil the garbanzo beans and then you use that water and you whisk that really well and you season it really well. And also, a lot of people don't keep in mind is when you're making like a meringue out of this, you have to have the water that you're boiling, it has to have the essence. So you have to boil it in heat with like the vanilla, whatever flavoring you're using, the lemon extract, whatever you're using, and then you make the meringue out of it. Otherwise, it will taste like toilet water. So I hope this was helpful. This is my plant-based meat haul. Check it out. If you use any of these items, let me know. And yeah, all of these items are they keep pretty well. So anyway, I'm about to go. Happy eating. Stay poppin', stay plant-based.